everybody, so I'm doing a bit of a battle report today. I'm here with Steve Brown, who also participates on the channel and is on YouTube. You can see him often in the comments on the for Muskets and Tomahawks stuff. And this is the way the table looks. We're doing a 300-point game. Steve is French and Indians, and I'm doing British and Indians. As far as the scenario, Steve has got the defense scenario in Muskets and Tomahawks, and I have the raid scenario. And just so you guys are somewhat familiar with that, you know, there's a chance that the game ends every turn with the defense scenario, and he has to basically defend this settlement. And with the raid scenario, I have to burn down all 3 buildings in the settlement, and he has to prevent me from being within the settlement, I think is also part of it. In addition to that, we are doing officer side plots. We've house ruled that when side plots directly interfere and make main plots unachievable, that we are re-rolling. And essentially, his side plot is friendship, where his officer is friends with my officer, and one of the goals is that my officer remains alive by the end of the game. Where mine, which is really fitting the way it worked out, is this war is no longer for me, I believe it's called, and I have to leave the game on the opposite edge of the table from my board with my officer as a victory condition for a side plot. So today with the battle report, I am going to try to do an in-action discussion each round with each of the armies, and to show a little bit more of the elements of the game and what transpired. And I usually just do the beginning and end of round discussion. I'll continue to do those. We're going to try to have a little bit more footage, so the game might be a little bit longer today. What I will do is let Steve just talk about the deployment that he has and his models he has today. So I'm starting with the models that are in front of this manor.
11 French regular Fusiliers with their officers standing on the front steps.
Then these ones by the barn.
5 Huron with muskets.
It's these guys right there. And then
8 Coureurs de Bois, French irregulars.
Okay. And as part of the defense scenario, you also have to have units in reserve.
Should be two more 5-man units of Hurons, one of them bloodthirsty with hand weapons.
Awesome. Okay, so I'm using a bit of a different list today, some of the same models, but we're actually paying 300 points, which is a little more than what I've typically used with my models in the past. I have 2 units of regulars that I've given the elite trait, so they're acting as elites. As well, the officer actually is elite and has the natural trait of tactician, which we've not used officer traits in the past. Did you give? You didn't give a trait on yours. Okay, so I spent points to give the tactician officer trait. As well, these guys are starting out as hidden with that hidden token, but I have 1 unit of Delawares hidden. I have a group of provincial militia, or locally raised militia, and then I also have a group of Iroquois that are where that hidden token is. The dice right here is still from deployment, just to show her 8 inches that I had to be within. So that is the table and the deployment, and we'll come back at one point in this round, and then for an end of first round discussion. See you in a bit. Hey everybody, so I'm doing a bit of a mid-round update. First rounds usually don't always have tons of shooting, but we have some about to happen. Steve's regulars used a lot of his actions to move his officer and his regulars into a firing line to fortify this wall here. The French Cordoba basically moved up into these woods up here. They actually have the native as well as the scout trait, so they get defensive and movement bonuses to go through woods. None of his reserves came on. It's hard for the first round that to happen, this scenario, so the other two groups of natives are not. And then his natives moved from this house up into this patch of woods. One of the things I neglected to mention is because I have two Indians units with hidden movement, they get a bonus dummy marker. So there are 3 tokens where I've moved my hidden markers up. 1, 2 to the woods right there, or excuse me, 2 right there, and then 3 right there. One of those is a dummy marker. Steve doesn't know which 2 are the ones that actually contain natives. My regulars have not gone yet. My provincial militia have moved up 1. Now what's about to happen is the natives on the French side are firing into that provincial militia. We've not rolled for it yet. There will be modifiers to that roll, and so we know that it's long range. We've measured it. It's greater than 12 inches for muskets, but the militia are in the open. Steve, I'm not sure what your normal roll is for. Do they hit on 4s or 5s normally, or is it better than that?
Huron are typically hitting on a 4+.
All right, you're hitting on a 4+, but then the modifier would be long range to make it a 5+.
Correct.
And I don't think that there are any other modifiers.
Long range, not extreme range, not fast, not pivoting, target in light, dense, heavy cover, no, point blank, no, there's target, no. So
okay, so you're hitting on 5s, and so we've got 5 guys hitting on 5s. All right, 2 shots. And so then we roll for kills, and I believe their muskets, so they're 3+.
3+.
All right. Wow. Okay, so I lose the 2. And then I would be now forced to take a reaction test. And we had determined that my guys were regulars.
Regular morale and colonial militia.
Because this is the first time I've used those today. And so you've not taken out 3 of my guys, and I've not taken fire from a firing line. But is there anything else that modifies it?
No.
Okay, so I roll just 1 die, and I got a 2.
Recoil.
Recoil. So that means they go back their movement, which is 4 inches facing you.
Correct.
Okay. And so measure this exactly later, but well, I think it's 4 inches. So. All right. So 3 guys go back 4 inches. Okay. All right. Well, we'll come back to you with an end of round update on what happens. See you in a bit. Hey everybody, so we're at the end of round 1. We've had a fair bit of action just happening now at the end of round 1. I have some Iroquois that are fleeing. They revealed themselves, went up to here in order to then either run into melee and charge or fire on the French Indians that were in the woods. What happened though was a card was revealed for the Coeur de Bois, and they ended up, I was unlucky with that card drop, but they ended up unleashing. Now, they unleashed and caused 1 casualty on the Indians, but they caused flight. They failed there. They rolled miserably on their reaction roll and failed. These provincials did fire on those Indians that were in there as well, hitting 1. But it's really difficult because they're in the woods and because of the rules. It was really difficult for them to hit him or to do any damage. But he hit just 1 hit and then didn't end up causing any casualties. And later on, with their subsequent moves, just moved out of the way. Over here, the 2 tokens are just hanging tight in the woods. The main French force here is on vigilance, and so they're basically on an ambush mode. The officer and the 2 units did get their forwards boys card moved up, and as well moved up again and positioned themselves very close. Now, the Indians that were in the woods here, this unit is within 6 inches, and so got the basically point blank range rule as well as in a firing line, which basically cancels out the -2 for the Indians being in the woods. Opened up and fired. Now they only really hit on a 5+. They normally, I think, rely on some of these special rules like the firing line to up that. But I rolled very, very good, and I actually caused 5 casualties, which is essentially wiped out the unit. There's no reaction test. This unit moved up again and is just staying there, but is not fired yet. Officer is just close behind. So that is the end of round 1. There was, a casualty and a flight on an Indian unit, 2 casualties on the civilians, and then 1 French unit of Indians that were wiped out up there. And see you sometime in the middle of the next round 2. So everybody, so we had not done the mid-turn action report this round. We're just here at the end of the action. Essentially, what's happened is there was an engagement with the Coeur de Bois that were in the woods here. I think there may be 1 model was taken from these guys when they fired in, but they were still hanging tight. But then the Indians that were fleeing actually regrouped, got a couple of reactions. They actually got within 6 and fired, and actually took some, and that's why they have we have this volley fire here. Took a couple more figures out of the Coeur de Bois. But then they got another action, and they threw their tomahawks and then charged and went into melee. By that point, they'd killed with their tomahawks, I think, another Coeur de Bois, if I remember correctly. But then through the melee, there were only 3 Coeur de Bois left. And so the Iroquois essentially slaughtered 2 out of the 3. And then the remaining French Coeur de Bois rolled for flight, but then was essentially killed, because if you roll a 4, 5, 6 after that, then you're swept, as they're charging down on you. And so during that time, Indians have actually moved up. He did get his reserve rolls this turn, so both of his reserve came up, and with their movements they've moved up. There was a battle happening here. The first, the provincials, British provincials or the colonial provincials, actually ended up using their actions to just move ahead of these regulars that are there, but were as a full line here. And so all they've done is just moved up. They've not reloaded their weapons, and that's why those black powder markers are there from prior rounds, because they only get 1 action at a time, and they've chosen... Excuse me 1 second. They've chosen movement over reloading. And so essentially we had this block here came up, and these French regulars fired upon them and essentially took most of them out. They'd lost 1 in a prior altercation, and then now they're down to 3. They ended up recoiling, so they haven't routed or gotten flight, but in which case they'd be turning around and going the other way. But they've recoiled back their movement, but they're essentially at a really small number of soldiers now. And so at this point in the game, this is where we're at, and we will be back shortly with the next round, round 3. We also rolled, and the game's not over, from the defense objective. We have to roll at the end of every round because there is a chance that the game ends. Okay, be back in a bit. Hey everybody, so we're in a mid-round update on round 3, and essentially the British or the colonial provincials came up and they didn't set the house on fire yet, but they have 3 markers. They need 1 more for it to actually catch fire. But then these Indian savages that have the savage trait charged around the building and wiped them out. Another thing of note that I didn't mention is these British regulars, I had my officer move up here in order to give the extra movement with the forward boys card to these colonial provincials, and given the fact that they're friends and there was the minor objective, I made the wrong calculation that I wouldn't get shot, and he just unloaded and took out my officer out of the game, so we both fail our side plots, and I'm without an officer. So that was a dumb move on my part. Basically, the 1 unit that was a token was revealed to be the dummy there, and then the other Indians came out over here. And so these are actually my Delawares. On this side, we had some shooting, I believe, from the French Indians over here that missed at these ones. I think there might have been 2 rounds of missing at these folks into the forest. What's left of the unit that was over here is coming around this side, and we haven't really had much action from the British regulars over here. I think that's pretty much it so far, and so we'll come back to an end of the round update on what happens. And the other thing too is we kind of house ruled. We're playing at 300 points, and typically a 400 point game you would need between 3 and 4 houses go up on fire. In a 200 point game it's like 1 and 2 or 2 houses. And we played long ways on the table, and we kind of just house ruled. We both kind of agreed that victory would be 2 buildings lit on fire for the raid objective here. It doesn't look like that will likely even happen, most likely so, but we'll see. Okay, talk to you later. Hey everybody, so we are at the end of turn 3, and essentially what has happened this round is we had Indians come through here. My Indians, they did actually get fired on, and they recoiled into the woods, but then they used their movement to come back up again, and they got up to here. This unit of regulars ended up charging onto this group of Indians and wiped them out and just took 1 loss. That was it, because there was only 4 left by that point. During that time, we did have a group of Indians in the woods here, and I had some Indians here. These guys came around to here, lucked out and got the card before these guys here, and I ended up throwing tomahawks and charging and wiping out all of them but 1, and then the one that remained fled and got tore down, cut down. There was some damage to these guys too, and they're actually right here. They were 5, and now they're 3, and they're getting poised to light this house on fire. These regulars came up. They haven't reloaded from the last turn. They just double moved up, getting ready to try to put the last fire onto here. These guys came around, basically came into these woods, and I think that is where we essentially left off. Now we rolled, and the game actually has ended. Neither one of us, it was just sort of like an unlucky roll depending on whether you wanted the game to continue, but neither one of us achieved our minor victory, in the sense that his guy who was friends with mine and ended up shooting him anyway, and then my guy who was meant to get off the board didn't make it. And then I didn't set the houses on fire, the 2 houses on fire, and then as well Steve didn't defend, because I've got 2 units that are within 4 inches of the buildings, and so he needed to keep them away in order for that to happen. And so we ended up, none of us really made our victory points. It was a really bloody battle and an enjoyable game, but it ended up being a draw because we weren't able to get our victory points in. So, all right, well, I hope that you guys enjoyed this battle report, and talk to you later.